$12 billion for 1,000 miles. We're off here by a factor of 3 or 4 with $46 billion. Where's the rest of the $46 billion?
Senator Rand Paul just ripped the mask off a $46 billion DHS budget bombshell uncovering government waste, corporate freeloading, and chilling surveillance on Americans. What he revealed at this hearing isn't just shocking, it's dangerous.
The border on the Mexican border is about 1,950 miles. We've fenced or walled about 700 of it. That leaves about 1,200 miles. There's 200 or 300 miles of it that probably never going to have a fence on. It's mountainous or just impossible to fence or wall.
Rand Paul starts off calm but sharp, laying out the facts like puzzle pieces. He breaks down the miles of the border, the cost per mile, and the parts that can't even be fenced. All this data to show how wildly the numbers don't add up.
CBP says it's $6.5 million per mile. Your response today was $12 million per mile. That means $12 billion for 1,000 miles. We're off here by a factor of 3 or 4 with $46 billion. Where's the rest of the $46 billion?
With each step, he's not just questioning the spending. He's exposing a gap so big it makes the government's $46 billion request look reckless and unexplained. The DHS representative's answer only deepened the mystery and the frustration.
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. We do have 702 miles of wall today. 598 of that are steel. The rest of that is temporary that's in place. Since the president's been in office, over 70 miles has been erected.
She rattled off numbers: 702 miles of existing wall, 598 miles of steel, a handful of contracts already allocated, and 5 more pending. But none of it addressed the heart of Senator Rand Paul's question. Why does it take $46 billion to finish something that their own estimates show could be done for a fraction of that? She tried to shift the focus by saying the money covers more than infrastructure and not just the wall construction, but never gave a clear breakdown.
It would be also surveillance equipment.
The number's way off. 1,000. You could do 1,000 miles for $12 billion. You're asking for $46 billion. So I'm one who's not impressed and would have to see more detail as to where the rest of the money goes. We can't just throw $30 billion out there and say that things cost a lot.
I agree. We'll get you the specifics on that.
Rand Paul's logic sliced right through the talking points. If 1,000 miles of wall costs roughly $12 billion, where's the other $34 billion going? The exchange exposed a familiar pattern. Government agencies drowning their requests in vague language, inflated budgets, and contracts buried in bureaucracy. By calmly pressing for numbers instead of slogans, Paul highlighted how DHS's response wasn't an explanation at all. It was a smokescreen. The tension in the room rose because this wasn't just about a wall. It was about massive government spending hidden under the banner of security, corporate contractors ready to cash in, and the quiet assumption that no one would notice. Paul noticed, and in doing so, he peeled back another layer of how taxpayer money can be drained with almost no accountability.
regard to the drones and all the preparatory work that DHS does and the government does for the NFL and for FIFA, does the NFL pay DHS for the work you do?
Rand Paul shifted to something almost no one talks about: the cozy relationship between billion-dollar sports leagues and taxpayer-funded security. He asked a simple, devastating question. Does the NFL or FIFA pay the Department of Homeland Security for the drones, surveillance, and preparatory work it does on their behalf?
Wait, not to my knowledge. I will...
In other words, American taxpayers are footing the bill for private mega events that rake in billions.
I mean, here's my point. The NFL makes billions of dollars. We're $2 trillion in the hole. I don't care if government shares their technology and government helps out the World Cup. They ought to pay. People are paying hundreds of dollars for tickets. I mean, thousands of dollars for the NFL, for Super Bowl and things. They're also paying for FIFA, and so these people ought to pay.
Paul's response was laser-focused and impossible to dismiss. He called out the absurdity of working Americans, many of whom could never afford a Super Bowl ticket, being forced to subsidize security for billion-dollar organizations.
It's ridiculous that the average taxpayer who could never afford to go to an NFL Super Bowl has got to pay for their security. Should the government help? If we have technology they don't, perhaps.
He tore into the hypocrisy. While the government is $2 trillion in the hole, it's quietly underwriting corporate giants who can easily afford their own protection. He demanded accountability, saying flatly that these leagues ought to pay, a point that struck right at the heart of government waste and cronyism. This moment revealed a raw truth. DHS isn't just protecting borders or Americans, it's protecting the profits of private empires with public money. Paul's calm but relentless questioning stripped away the polite veneer and showed taxpayers exactly where their money goes and why the system is rigged to favor the powerful. It wasn't just a question about drones or security, it was about who the government actually serves, everyday citizens or billion-dollar corporations.
With regard to TSA Quiet Skies and Tulsi Gabbard situation, I suspect there are going to be other people that were caught up in this thing as well. I'm horrified by the idea that we took a former congresswoman and we're surveilling her and riding on jets with her.
Rand Paul then zeroed in on one of the most chilling parts of the hearing, the TSA's secretive Quiet Skies surveillance program. With a tone of disbelief, he referenced Tulsi Gabbard's situation, pointing out how our former U.S. Congresswoman was reportedly surveilled and even tailed on flights by federal agents. He warned that if it could happen to her, it could happen to anyone. This wasn't just a political jab, it was a warning shot about unchecked government power. Paul's horror was visible, not theatrical, but grounded in principle. A government agency quietly compiling watch lists, secretly assigning agents to follow people and tracking them without warrants or charges is exactly the kind of civil liberty abuse he's been sounding alarms about for years. The tension was undeniable. By highlighting Gabbard's case, Paul revealed the darker truth behind national security programs that operate in the shadows, where oversight is weak, privacy is ignored, and ordinary Americans can become targets without ever knowing it. This moment drove home the heart of his questioning. If a former member of Congress isn't safe from government surveillance, who is?
Hear the whole story of what happened. I want to hear that people have been let go, that they're no longer doing this. If there were abuses of Tulsi Gabbard's liberties, I want to hear from that. But I want repercussions to come from this. And
Rand Paul didn't just stop at exposing the surveillance, he demanded consequences. His tone sharpened as he called for the full story. Who ordered this? Who approved it? And who's still doing it? He made it clear he wasn't satisfied with vague reassurances. If Tulsi Gabbard's civil liberties were violated, he wanted names, resignations, and an end to the practice. This was Paul at his most relentless. He wasn't asking for a report, he was asking for repercussions. He was pressing for accountability from a system that rarely gives any, especially when it comes to secret surveillance programs. By saying outright that people should be fired if abuses occurred, Paul positioned himself as the lone figure in the room willing to challenge the quiet normalization of government overreach.
you said something's coming. Please let us know, and let us know how the program, the destruction of civil liberties can be minimized. I frankly probably have trouble with the whole program, but let's see if there's some way. But we need significant reform.
The tension hit a peak here. It wasn't just about a former congresswoman anymore. It was about whether Americans have any real recourse when powerful agencies cross the line. In that moment, Paul framed the fight as bigger than politics, a battle for basic constitutional limits and the public's right to know who is watching them.
If it needs legislation, please come to us with that. Thank you for your testimony
today.
today.
Thank you.
Even as Rand Paul closed the questioning, he kept the heat on. His words were polite, but beneath the formality was a clear warning. This program had gone too far, and the destruction of civil liberties could no longer be brushed aside. He asked the DHS leadership to come forward with real reforms, or even legislation if necessary, to rein in the surveillance state before it spirals further. This was Paul's way of drawing a line, acknowledging the testimony but making it plain that business as usual isn't acceptable. He signaled to the public that this fight isn't over, that oversight is coming, and that someone in Congress is willing to challenge a government machine that's grown used to secrecy and unchecked power. It was a closing statement, but also a shot across the bow. Reform is coming, or Congress will act.